The difference between me and anyone else who's going to invite you to design a collection with them is I can actually make the thing. We're not just stopping with sketches and inspiration, we're actually going to make clothing. If we're going to end up at the end of these 13 weeks with 12 looks, we need to get going. We need to start making. So from here forward, I'm gonna set the target of making 2 to 3 prototypes per episode. And when I say prototypes, that might be a look, that might be a piece. I'm not really sure how that's gonna turn out yet, but of course, I'm gonna take you along with me as we do this. If you're new here, I'm Leigh. We are on week 5 of a 13-week journey making my first fashion collection. This is where it really gets fun. If you were one of the people who last week was like, I don't see how the dots are connecting between some of the things I had started before and really finding that point of reference, I'm actually kind of with you. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna toss them out the window quite yet, because I do think a core concept of exploring textile arts yet again, which is kind of what we started with, but in a more abstract way, will add layers to how I approach the traditional design process.
The foundation of this design is just a series of squares playing with geometry, and I'll show you more of the inspiration in a moment. But to get started, I'm just jumping in by cutting out some squares and then putting what is almost like a collar, a puffed center ring on each of them with little straps to secure them, because I'm trying to build this piece in a modular way, square by square.
Today is my birthday. There is nothing that I would rather be doing than working on this collection and sharing it with you. So thank you so much for being here and letting me do that. Oh, and since it is my birthday, yes, I am wearing like a ball gown just tucked into some trousers that I made, because I mean, you should if it's your birthday, and this is actually really comfy. So the first thing that woke me up out of a dead sleep, because I needed to take a look at it, was this concept of abstracting the Bauhaus geometry. You can see just a really geometric sketch here, and then this was kind of a concept of taking a square but putting like a knitted hole in it with ties, and then different ways that that could play around the body, using this as something else that was a different shape. And so you can see there's something geometric that I think naturally came out as a reaction to reviewing all of those materials over and over again. But then I also started thinking about some of the ideas at different scales and in different structures. I need to explain how my brain works a little bit, because otherwise, you'll probably think I'm skipping a few steps.
I'm really good at visualizing things in 3 dimensions. My preferred methodology for jumping into making something is estimating something like the size of the square I might want to cut out, and then starting to build that pattern from scratch, from the ground up. I find creating things a lot easier sometimes than necessarily just sketching out ideas, because putting in 2D on paper then just has to get translated back into 3 dimensions to create the garment.
My process is a little bit different than a lot of other designers, because I very quickly want to take something from an idea to making it, figuring out how the seams come together to achieve the shape that I want. I always love keeping swatches and things on the mood board and moving them around all the time, because occasionally you'll get colors that will just sit next to each other in a way that's really interesting. Things that are unplanned just kind of come together and can become a print or a pattern or something like that.
Now that I've captured that idea, let's get back to finishing that piece.
It's definitely not a process that's for everybody. It's almost like draping, because I'm just kind of holding things up and being like, okay, these need to come together, and then taking a look at something else and being like, this sleeve should be closed here to give the shape that I want. It has taken me a long time to trust my gut that something that I'm estimating the size and shape of is going to turn out the way I want. When I draped a Dior bar jacket by just kind of estimating what I thought the shape should be, and then it actually came out really beautifully,
that was such an eye-opening experience for me and really built my confidence in being able to do that. But it's now something that I really lean into. I'm testing this out in fabrication that is not going to be what it's made out of ultimately. And just to troll myself for a second, I'm just using this material because I have a lot of it, but I think with this mustard cuff, which again, I have mustard and a red ribbing on my shelf, so it's just what I have. It's giving Star Wars spin-off. Like this is some sort of dystopian workwear and people wear different colors to indicate their jobs or something. Not what I'm going for. I just keep kind of taking a step back and thinking about the material that I want it in. And what I have been thinking of is in this blue tweed that we have, which would give it much more of a sweater vibe rather than this, you know, even though it's metallic, it feels very sweatshirty and I want it to feel more sweater than sweatshirt. But I'm very happy with how this is coming together from a shape perspective. This is what I want. It looks the way I want on. It has kind of that modular feeling to it. It's amazing the power of material, because it has a very, very specific aesthetic. So we started out with just a bunch of weird squares we're playing around with, abstracting of Bauhaus geometry, taking these squares, layering them together, playing around and seeing what will happen. And what I love is we've ended up with actually a fairly traditional Dolman sleeve shape just by stitching closed the lower half of this square and then using this tie here to just kind of bring it in. It's a very classic sleeve shape and I just love that. I love that you can play around with geometry and then end up with a very arguably normal pattern piece. Obviously there's lots of layers to this, there's lots of different elements, there will be a top part to this. I just wanted to see what it was like with just the sleeves. So much fun playing around with this part of the process. It's definitely not the way everyone does it, but for me, I need to take it off of the 2D paper and really start messing around. This is exactly what I wanted it to be, even down to the gathering in around the wrist using some ribbing, which is a technique that's done with sweatshirts and for knitwear. I need to keep working on this idea a little bit. I need to decide how these two things connect with that kind of bib piece, what it looks like right now. I don't want it to be a bib, so it'll evolve. But yeah, so that is how we're gonna start actually making pieces, and next week it's kicking into full gear. I'm gonna ask you for a favor because I'm wearing a lot of proverbial hats during this process. The swim cap from the 3rd episode, not included in that. I'd love for you to be part of my design team. And what I mean by that, since I'm very firmly in that creative director role, I'd love your feedback on just how you think things are going. I'm gonna be designing prints, I'm making all of these things. We're trying to have it be a cohesive thing, but I'd love your input, I'd love your feedback. And if that's something that you would like to be a part of, I'm gonna ask you to hit that little bell next to the subscribe button because we're doing this in real time. We only have 8 more weeks left. So if you're giving me feedback on a video 3 weeks after it's posted, the ship has sailed, we need to do this in real time. So hit that little notification button, give me your feedback, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on the collection as we develop it together. And I am toying with at some point doing a styling editing session live. So if you want to be a part of that, let me know. I can't wait to hear from you in the comments. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next week.